Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but I think it is still fair to say that this brewery are best known for their New England hazy IPAs. And in fact, these guys were one of the breweries who really kicked off that style here in Sweden. They're one of the most well-known Swedish craft breweries these days, one of my most reviewed breweries here on Rampant Lion Reviews at this point in time as well, so it's always nice to try the new beers from them, and it's one of their latest releases that we're going to have a look at today. I've heard this one is nice, so hopefully it lives up to those expectations. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's crack on and see how we go. So for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in with the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return once again to Stigbergets Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Marmennill. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and it's another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the Lokal Osmoskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for December of 2021, and it was released along with the Wet Hop actually, which I do wish I had bought as well because that is supposed to be a very nice West Coast IPA. But the beers that I've had with this kind of artwork on them before from Stigbergets have been particularly good, and that was my main motivation for choosing this one from the December assortment, because yeah, you know, when you know that a brewery is good, quite often it just comes down to, if you've got a choice of their beers, it comes down to, you know, which one has the nicest name or the nicest artwork. That's really how I go when I don't know, or when I know a brewery quite well and there's a choice of their beers. So that was the main reason for choosing this one, but I have heard that this beer is supposed to be pretty nice actually, and nice to return to Stigbergets for a New England hazy after what feels like a little while as well actually. So let's crack on and see how we go with this beer then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regular at the moment because I am back over in Sweden for a little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you once again about Stigbergets Bryggeri. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've mentioned already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson. So these guys own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino and the Hagabions Cafe, which can be found on Linnegatan in the city, and these both opened back in 2007. But this building is actually an independent cinema, and if you want to have a look at it, you can check out my Out and About video that I filmed in Gothenburg back in about October of 2019, I want to say. So you can go and have a little look at that, but really quite an interesting building, and I do hope that I can go and actually watch a film there at some point in the future. But originally, the idea that they had was to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, and this led to them kegging the beer and then selling it on to other pubs and eventually to bottling in November of 2014. But their original beers were mainly English and German styles, but of course they really started to make their name when they switched their focus to the more American styles of beer. The original head brewer was Ole Anderson, who is one of the co-owners of OO Brewing. He stayed with them until, I think it was April of 2017, and he was replaced for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve. But Ole Anderson's tenure at Stigbergets Bryggeri was what really kind of put them on the map, if you like. He was the creator of the GBG Beer Week beer for 2016. He also made the Amazing Haze under the Stigbergets name, and at the same time he created Narangi for his OO brewing company as well. So yeah, those are the GBG Beer Week beer, Amazing Haze, and the Narangi. Those are three of the iconic Swedish New England IPAs. Probably Opigård's New Sweden IPA would be in there as well, and if Brewski had a regular range, something from them would no doubt be kind of iconic in that sense as well. But yeah, these guys were the ones who really helped kick off, or Ole Anderson was the one who really helped kick off the whole New England haze craze here in Sweden. But they moved a little bit later on to a brewery at Partihalarna just after Ole Anderson left, I believe, and this is where they were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time, and they also began to work on some sour beers up there as well. But they started selling their beers in 440ml cans, and this has allowed them to export a lot more. You will find some of their stronger beers in the kind of small Red Bull type 330ml cans, and these days the brew team is Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and also Lucas Munraid, who used to work for All In, and I believe they also have Ida Ivarsson as well, who used to work for Brewkes Niton, but she's also doing a little bit of distilling from what I understand too, so maybe some even more exciting things to come from Stigbergets over the next little while. But in the summer of 2020 they moved into a new brewery in Ringen, and apparently this place is going to have some swimming facilities too, so they want to treat it as a kind of experience brewery, if you like, so we'll need to see how that progresses. But I do need to get up to Stigbergets at some point and take a little look around, because that's something that I've not really done. In April of 2020, they also opened up their, I believe it was April 2020, they opened up their bar in Stockholm, and they also have their own folk ale shop in Gothenburg as well. So for those of you who don't know, in Sweden, folk ale is anything that is 3.5% ABV and below. That can be sold privately in the supermarkets. Anything above that has to go through the state monopoly, Systembolaget as it's known. But as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 168 different kinds of beer from what I understand, and as I say, the most well-known ones are of course are the New England Hazy IPAs. Amazing Haze is probably the beer that you really need to start with when it comes to Stigbergets Bryggeri. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, that is it for your history section in this video. We can get on and actually have a taste of the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. But as you can see, it does look pretty nice. For those of you who don't know, the name of this beer, Marmennill, apparently the Marmennill in Norse mythology were mermen who could make prophecies about the future. So yeah, kind of interesting. I hadn't heard of them before, but yeah, you can see the Marmennill just in the middle of the painting there, kind of with the fish. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up just because of the reflections and things there, but yeah, at the top of the can you can see Stigbergets. I might just see if I can wipe the condensation off that. I think it's playing a little bit of havoc there, but there you can see Stigbergets Bryggeri. It's very good. And there you can see the guy just chilling in the water. But yeah, very nicely presented. This one, 440ml can, and I believe I paid, I want to say about 55 Swedish kronor for this one. So that translates roughly to €5.50, somewhere in the region of £5 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $6.50, $7 American for this can. So yeah, certainly looks very, very nice. Plain silver top on it, and as we said earlier, it was released in the December lot of the Lokalis Moscow here in Sweden. But let's crack it open and see how we go. The Marmennill, 7.5% New England Hazy IPA from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg. Let's do this. Let's see where we go. Yeah. Oh, you can smell this as soon as you open it up. It smells lovely, actually. I wasn't able to find out anywhere what hops and malts and things were in this one, so we'll just need to go for it and see what it's like. But it does say on the side, this one just has barley, oats and wheat in it. No rye, because I think recently we actually had a beer in this particular series, if we can call it that, from Stigbergets called, oh, what was it called again? I can't remember, but it did definitely have a little bit of rye in it. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, and as you would expect, it's poured with a lovely, big, bright, hazy colour, and there's a little bit of head on this one too. So this is exactly what you'd expect from a New England IPA. So before that head completely disappears, it's not the biggest of heads, of course, we can say that it's poured with about a 1/4 finger of a frothy white head. That is just fading away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer, but there is a big thicker foamy ring around the edge of the glass. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice actually. So yeah, it goes together pretty well. In terms of the colour of this one, I would say this is a lovely kind of Definitely leaning towards a bright, quite a bright yellow or mango juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of these beers depends on one, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining the EBC rating of the beer. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put into the beer and any barrel aging that you do will also have an effect, but when it comes to New England IPAs, you don't normally have to care about those variables. Those more come into play when we're talking about different kinds of sour beer. But yeah, certainly looks pretty damn nice, I have to say. The level of haze on this one for a 7.5%er is kind of impressive in one way, but not so impressive in the other, because you would expect it to be a little bit more sort of hazy. But remember, the haze on these beers really depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree the yeast as well. And this can vary from brewery to brewery and even recipe to recipe. So yeah, certainly looks very nice, this one. Nothing really untoward in terms of the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I think we can move on and take a little look at the aroma of this one. So let's go for it. And I can tell you just from the little whiff I had of it, I think this is going to be a really oaty leaning, quite smooth and juicy New England IPA. So let's look at that. Yeah, I think that prognosis is pretty right, to be honest with you. So first impression of this one is it does have a little bit of a kind of malty bite to it in a sense, so you do get a wee bit of that, but at the same time it's quite smooth and sweet in that way, but not overly sweet. You can get very sweet New England IPAs. The green component is quite bright and fresh, and the fruity character is quite soft and tropical and juicy in a sense too. So yeah, I think this is going to be quite nice, but let's just break down the aroma for you and go into a little bit more in depth. So the backbone, the malty backbone of this beer, definitely at the back of the nose, you do get a little bit of that kind of wheaty bite or wheaty pungency out of this one. So I do quite like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, a little bit of kind of wheaty bite to it. You can certainly smell a wee bit of bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that, there's a lovely kind of fresh white bread. Now, what I would say about this one is that the bready character in this beer comes across as being quite dense. And I think that's the wheat that's doing that, because the wheat in a lot of ways does actually smell quite thick and quite smooth, but there is just a little bit of bitiness to it. So yeah, I do quite like that about this beer. But on the how would we say, on the I think on top of that, I'm trying to see if there's any sweetness to this beer. I'm not 100% sure. Now, as I've told you before, actually, on this point, I think there's 6 different variables you have to think about when it comes to New England IPAs. They can be a little bit more farmhousey and yeasty. They can be barley malt leaning and bready, or rye leaning and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, or they can be a little bit more kind of sweet and caramelly and biscuity and stuff like that. You can get all 6 of these things in the New England IPA. So for me, this one is leaning towards the kind of wheaty and oaty side of things. The wheaty character actually smells quite thick in this, to be honest with you. But there is a slight degree of sweetness to it, but not overly much. And I'm getting a little bit of that kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing out of it. So yeah, definitely a nice little bit of that in here. A little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of quality as well. And yeah, I think it does go together. It does go together really, really nicely in that sense. So yeah, the way that works, I think, is really, it is pretty nice actually. So you've got a lovely big kind of soft white bready just malty backbone to this, and I think it comes, the more that you smell of this, the more the oats kind of sweeten up a little bit. And as I've said to you before, when it comes to the oaty character in these New England IPAs, quite often that is an indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. So just bear that in mind when it comes to these beers. This one actually does smell quite creamy, but you are starting to get a little bit of that dryness from the oats, and it's usually when the oats get a little bit dry, you can tell the beer is starting to kind of age a little bit. But with this one, you get a lovely creamy oaty character out of it. You do get a wee bit of sweetness in there. As I say, there's a little bit of that butter candy, butterscotchy type vibe to the beer as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really pretty nice actually. So yeah, malty side of this one gets a thumbs up from me. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. So green component is kind of what you'd expect. So for me, there's a little teeny bit of earthiness in this one, but when I smell this beer, it's mainly quite a bright floral aromatic component that comes out of it, and it's actually just blends in. It blends in with the malt base really quite nicely. But there's a lot of grassiness to this one, and I would say the grassy character has a good little bit of it has a good little bit of not earthiness, a good little bit of zestiness to it for sure. So yeah, minimal earthiness, nice bright floral character, and then a bright and kind of zesty, grassy vibe coming out of this beer. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together in that sense. So yeah, the grassy character that comes out of this beer, I think, is very, very nice actually. So yeah, lovely. So green component is pretty well done in this. So on top of the that, then you've got the fruity side of the beer, and this one's really soft and tropical. There's something that telling me that it could be a little bit of like, you know, Idaho 7 or something like that in this beer. Just the softness of the tropical fruit just makes me think Idaho 7. So yeah, for me, there's a lovely big. You get a teeny little bit of passion fruit in this one. There's a teeny wee bit of passion fruit in there. But yeah, lovely big juicy mango-y qualities for sure. Big juicy mango notes. A little bit of an apricot-y character in there as well. And you've also got a bit of a more kind of pineapple-y note as well. So that kind of, as I say, just a little bit of passion fruit, big juicy mango, and it's the big juicy mango and the softness of the other things in there, the apricot and the pineapple, and the slight oiliness of the pineapple. That's what really makes me wonder if it is Idaho 7 that's in here. I could be completely wrong, and there's so many hops out there these days that it makes it difficult to play guess the hops in the way that I used to back in the day. But yeah, certainly a good little bit of that for me with this one. Mango, pineapple, and a little bit of a little bit of apricot in there, but I do actually get a fair wee bit of orange out of this one. So, you know, there could be something like Amarillo or a bit of Mosaic in this beer. There are other options out there, of course, like Mandarina Bavaria, Pacifica, and so on. But yeah, fruity wise, the beer with this one, it's a lot of juicy mango, fair wee bit of a kind of oily orange in there, and then those other tropical notes that I was talking about. But yeah, if it was something like Idaho 7 and Amarillo in this, that wouldn't surprise me. But aroma wise, this beer comes across very, very nicely. So yeah, let's get the rest of this guy into the glass, and we'll have a taste of this one then. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to go over the aroma of the beer. I think that's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskies and sakes and things like that. But yeah, I think it's about time that we have a look at this one properly then. So yeah, this is the Marmennill 7.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah. That's another pretty damn solid beer from Stigbergets. That is very, very nice. I was going to say, straight away, big thumbs up to them. First impression of this one is that it really leans towards that soft, juicy side of things. And it's quite creamy and oaty, absolutely. It really leans towards that nice, creamy, oaty side. But it feels very clean and a little bit wet in a sense too. So I really like how, I do really like how this one goes about its business in that particular sense. So yeah, Stigbergets have done a very nice job of this. So that gets a thumbs up for me. Yeah, that's a lovely New England IPA. What I would say is, it's one of the more. I'd say that it's really one of the more kind of relaxed and just juicy, drinkable ones that I've had from Stigbergets. And the last, from what I remember, the last ones that I had were a little bit more kind of zippy and kind of bold and punchy and in your face. And this is what I really like about Stigbergets, is they do these beers and they show you a whole host of different nuances. You can go from month to month and have a different New England IPA from these guys, and they always come across quite differently actually. So yeah, definitely worth trying some of the beers. It's always difficult to pick out a favourite beer from a brewery like Stigbergets, because you always get a really high quality thing. And to be quite honest, the amount of beers, I think I've reviewed about 70 odd beers from Stigbergets these days, so it's difficult to remember every one that you have. But yeah, this is pretty nice actually. So yeah, let's have a go with this one and see if you can get the chance. I'm a little bit gutted I missed the wet hop one, because that is supposed to be a really nice West Coast IPA. But yeah, this not disappointed with this one. Let's just say that. But yeah, let's break down the flavour of this one for you then, and describe it a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, it's lovely, juicy beer, this one. So straight away across the middle of your palate then, as you go further into the aftertaste for this one, you can feel on that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of bread crust coming out of this. There is a really nice, just little bit of a kind of like fresh bread. There's a little bit of that sort of fresh bread, hedgehog roll type thing comes out of this one. So yeah, you do get that out of this beer. On top of that, you get a nice kind of, as I say, you get a nice little bit of a kind of fresh white bready character there. And the bread isn't actually too dense in this one. The white bready character isn't so dense in a sense. And the other impression I had of this beer, as I said in the aroma, was that the wheaty character was going to do a lot and thicken out the bready component of this beer, but it actually doesn't really do that. And the wheat isn't quite as prominent in this one as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, nice little bit, as I say, nice little bit of kind of bread crusty backbone, smooth white bready character in there. On top of that, you get from the barley malt, you get that little bit. You can feel a little touch of the wheat there, just sitting under the oats. But then on top of that, the kind of fourth layer in this one, if you like, is definitely that kind of thick oaty note there, and you can feel that the oats are quite nice and smooth and creamy for sure. So I really like that about this one as well. And you do get a slight degree of sweetness out of this too, but because it's only 7.5%, you're not getting quite the same level that you would out of the 8 and 8.5% double IPAs that you often get. And it's quite interesting because quite a number of the breweries these days, they'll stick to 6, in Sweden at least, they'll stick to 6.5%. When it comes to regular IPAs, then they'll do 8% for the double IPAs, and I'm not sure if that's come about just because of some of the Swedish tax laws or something like this, but I have noticed that trend a little bit. Quite often, yeah, you get a 6.5% single and then an 8% double out of a lot of breweries. But yeah, 7.5%. Stigbergets have done a few beers at 7 and 7.5%, and they're one of the few breweries that I can think of off the top of my head who do it regularly. But correct me on that in the comments section below if I'm wrong. But yeah, you do get a good little bit of that Werther's Original sweetness there. So like I say, on top of everything, you get that down the middle line of your tongue. You've got a nice, smooth, oaty, creamy note out of this one. And as I say, oats are often an indicator of how fresh your beer is going to be. But yeah, nice, big, thick, oaty, creamy note. As you go out towards the edge of your palate, there's a little bit of, you do have a little bit of kind of, you know, a little bit, you get a little bit of that kind of more, the slightly drier character out of the oats and a little bit of sweetness there, but in the dead centre of your palate you get a small kind of quite condensed circle there where you get that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing coming out of this one. And again, that goes together very, very nicely in this beer, so it gets a thumbs up from me actually. Yeah. So I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty side of this beer, but I will say the further you go into the aftertaste in that middle third of your palate, it does lean a little bit more towards a kind of fresh, flowery, bready character. So yeah, the way that goes together is pretty nice actually. So border region between middle and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. So yeah, nice little bit of a bready character for sure, a little bit of bread crusty note to it. But then the base, the back third of that palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty base there. And then on top of that, you can feel the white bready layer, and that feels a little bit thicker on that back third of your palate. It feels a little bit bigger on the back third of your palate the further up you go. And then on top of that, you start to get the wheat, and the wheat has a little bit of bitiness to it for sure. So the wheat does have that nice a little bit of zip and bite to it on the back of the palate. But then on top of the wheaty layer, you can certainly pick out a little bit of the yeast. And then, so the yeasty character in this beer, it feels a little bit more like a kind of dense bready note there, but it has a little bit of a kind of spicy, almost like peppery type thing there. So you can just feel the yeasty character in this beer sitting on top of that back third of your palate, but you can feel for sure that the height of the flavour on that back third of your palate is taller, but as you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit as you go into the middle third of your palate and squashes down a little bit. So yeah, I like how that goes together in this beer. It's, again, very, very nicely done. The malty yeasty side of this beer is very, very good, really leaning towards that smooth, creamy, oaty side of things. But let's focus on the hoppy component then. So, green component first off then. So the back corners of the palate in this beer, you get a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it has got a little bit of a herbal quality to it, and as you push forward towards the kind of front corners of the palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing. So yeah, nice little bit of floral aromaticity in there. Green component's quite interesting because the earthiness, I think, actually does, I feel the earthiness in this beer spreading forward a little bit. So could it be a little bit of mosaic that was giving us that orange that I was picking up earlier? Don't know. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of that lighter grassy sort of thing. It has got a slight degree of zestiness to it, but yeah, the way that everything goes together in this, I think, is very, very nice. Lovely green component for sure. But yeah, I think the green component is nice. I'm just surprised at the earthiness, how the earthiness comes out of this one a little bit. But yeah, as I always say, New England IPAs, they rely on late addition and dry hopping rather than early addition hopping, which you also get in addition to those two in the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, this beer, it's just interesting how that floral aromaticity kind of resonates there, and a wee bit of the zestiness just sits there as well. So yeah, it's a lovely lovely beer, this one, in terms of its green component too. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the sort of fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. You can feel that nice little bit of bread crusty character coming out. Then the base of the front third of your palate is like a nice kind of smooth oaty type thing that comes out of it. So yeah, nice smooth oatiness to this beer for sure. It's sitting on top of that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And as I said, I really wouldn't be surprised if it was something like Idaho 7 that was being used in this one. There's just something about this beer makes me think of that hop, the smoothness of the tropical fruits. So if you go towards the back of that front 30 palate, you get a little bit of a kind of passion fruity sort of thing. As you move further forward, yeah, you've got a big juicy mango component in there. Underneath you get a little bit of like, you know, these papaya, apricot sort of things, those dry tropical fruits, and then you can just feel as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more pineapple like, and yeah, you've got a little bit of a more kind of pineapple-y sort of thing, and yeah, that works. But yeah, the front half of the front third of your palate is certainly a little bit more it is certainly a little bit more of a kind of, you do get a little bit of an orangey tangerine in this, so I would not be surprised if this beer is something simple like, you know, Idaho 7 and Mosaic. It doesn't come across as overly complex in its tropical fruits, but it works really nicely. There's maybe a teeny little hint of a very slightly limey character just on the front tip of the tongue, but that's very minimal. But yeah, a lot of mango for me, bit of papaya and apricot underneath, and the pineapple. That the way that the tropical fruits come out in this one really make me think Idaho 7. And the front third of your palate, it's quite a soft orange, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit of Sabro or something, but I don't get so much in the way of a kind of coconutty note out of it. But as I say, the real lightness of the oranges in this does make me wonder a little bit about Sabro. But yeah, the fruity character in this beer is really nice and soft and juicy, and that's very in keeping with the whole kind of oaty creamy vibe that this IPA is going for. So again, a big thumbs up to Stigbergets for this one. I think they've done a really good job here. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. It's really well done. So let's round off with a little look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, as I said, this beer, pretty much mid-bodied, carbonation is very smooth. It's got a creamy yet slightly slick and oily mouthfeel, and I think that really suits it. So yeah, nice little bit of a kind of creamy, slick, smooth sort of thing. And yeah, it is really nice in that sense. So you've got a little bit of you really have got a nice little bit of how would you say, there is, in terms of IBUs, I don't think this beer is very high in that sense. I think this is, about a 30 IBU beer, fairly standard for a New England, of course. The malt base, as we said, is very, very smooth. There's a slight degree of sweetness to it, a lot of that kind of creamy oaty character though, and that for me dominates. But further into the aftertaste, you will get a little bit of wheaty bitiness out of it. So generally speaking, very smooth malt base, and you've got some lovely, juicy, fruity vibes coming out of the beer. So yeah, let's see what we can. I think that one, as I say with this one, I think you really, in terms of the aftertaste, I think it is a little bit of bread crust. I think the bread crust is the thing that really lingers in this one. But juicy, fruity wise, this beer is very soft and tropically. But I really would be interested to see if it was Idaho 7 and a bit of Mosaic or Sabro or something like that was in this one. But a lovely beer, and definitely up to the standards that we expect of Stigbergets Bryggeri. So I think we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this one is the Marmennill, a New England Hazy IPA at 7.5% ABV from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg, Göteborg, here in Sweden. There we go. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, see you in the next review.